Hi, and welcome to Over the Gunsmith's Shoulder. I'm Gene Kelly, president of the American Gunsmithing Institute, and in this segment, Master Gunsmith Ken Brooks is going to walk you step by step through a gunsmithing repair. You're going to learn a lot. And if you'd like to learn to be a certified professional gunsmith, then go to AmericanGunsmithingInstitute.com and request an information package. Now let's learn from Ken.
Well, hey, it's Ken. We're back again at my bench. We're going to do some repairs today. First thing we got going is a Savage 24. So looking at the repair tag, it says the repair the forearm latch. The rubber bands holding the forearm on were kind of a giveaway. I'm going to break it open and show you that it is indeed empty. Be aware these are guns that are for repair in my shop, so they've all been cleared already. This particular one was actually mailed to us, so yeah, it's been checked by multiple people multiple times. The shipping and handling, me, then the cameraman, then me again, now you. So just be aware, it is indeed empty and safe. So repair the forearm. Rubber bands are holding things together. Let's see what we got going on. I'm guessing that either it's assembled wrong or we got a broken spring. There's a couple different springs that hold the forearm on. And, well, yeah. So our lug's not broken off. That's all well and good. So we're just going to set that back half of the gun over there. So right here you can see that there's no tension on our spring. So I'm guessing that the spring, and that's literally what Savage calls it, the Forend spring, is broken. So I'm going to turn this around. And the reason I'm turning around, let me get a pointer here, is you look down in here in this little torsion spring, you can see it just doesn't look happy. So that is the Forend spring, that little torsion spring in there. So let me pull it apart and we'll figure out what's what. So, yeah, you can see this spring is not happy. It's broken in half, actually. And you can see I'm not the first one to have this gun apart. This is a nail that they're using for a pivot here. So what we're going to do is replace the nail and the spring, because the spring is broken. You gotta love it. There, it jumped out at me. When guys use nails, guys and gals, whoever, I can't tell you how many times I've found nails inside a gun holding it together or being used for different things. And be aware, your main Forend latch spring, that pin can fall out. You'd see how it was falling out on its own. And then, of course, the spring that we were pretty sure was broken is indeed definitely broken. So at this point, I'll run into inventory and parts inventory, see if we got one. If we do, great, I'll bring it back, show you how it goes in, and away we go. I'm going to have to make a pin, unless I have one in inventory. If we don't, then this would go in the waiting parts rack. So I would put all these pieces inside a Ziploc bag, tie it to the gun, put a little Post-it note on the tag that says, needs this part, and figure out where I'm going to get it from one of the parts distributors and go ahead and get it listed on the next order. So then it may be 2 or 3 weeks before I get that part in. So this would simply go in the waiting until the part comes in. So let me go see if we got these. Come back and give you an update. Back from parts inventory, 2 things. No pin. So I'm going to have to make one. not a life or death thing. That's, you know, it's part of the job, no big thing. But I do have the spring, which is the better thing. Now I don't have to fabricate this. We don't have to wait for it to come in the mail through a parts order or whatnot. So first thing I'm going to do is just kind of show you how it sits in here and where we're going. I'm going to use my punch. All right, so punch is basically holding the spring in place. Turn this over, and it's spring loaded up, which is what it has to be. So you can see that the punch is real tiny. The nail that was holding it is, let's mic that just for fun, about 70 thousandths. I'm going to go ahead and pull my punch out and mic the hole. And we're getting 82. Flip it over on this side, 82-ish. So if I got in the 80 realm, I figure it's going to be fine. I'll probably try to peen over one end of whatever I use, and what I'm going to be using is spring stock. I got a whole assortment here that are fairly close to the right size. Well, that one's 105 thousandths, so I can turn it down. I don't really want to. What's this one? Well, that one's about 80. 90, and another 105. All right, so get these 105 guys out of here. They're in the way. So we know that the nail, excuse me, was 70, so it was way undersized. So I'm thinking that the 80 thousandths one will fit through the hole in the housing, the forearm iron, and work just fine, especially if I thump the end. And you can see the factory pin on this spring likes to almost fall out. So this isn't one of those things that has to be super duper precise. Just got to be a pin that spring pivots off of. And it's got to be 400 and, well, let's say 85 thousandths in length. So what I'm going to do is just simply cut that off. Make a note of that. Actually, I'll just lock my dial calipers. I'm going to have to change my position for just a minute, get over to my vise with my Forend so we can cut this off, and then we're going to have to run over to the little lathe to polish up the end. So give me a minute. So what I got in the vise is the spring stock clamp. You can see that I put some Sharpie marker on there. My dial calipers are locked in place, so I can go from the one end. Basically, I just want to scratch where the Sharpie is, so I've got a point of reference. Now I'm going to come in with my cutoff disc on my Forend, and I always cut them off a little long. You can always cut it off a second time. Once it starts to cut, you can pull it off. Now I can run over to the lathe and break the ends, polish them up. All right, we're at the other side of my workbench where I've got the little lathe, and I have that little piece of spring stock clamped in the vise, the jaws of the lathe. This little lathe is, the mechanics in it don't work. So I don't have feed for this little lathe. This lathe is set up for doing what I'm doing. So I'm going to be doing some filing and some sanding, and I know that's a no-no on a lathe because it ruins the runway. But we're not worried about it on this one. That's what this one is for. It's for polishing screw heads, retipping firing pins, things of that nature. I can still drill a hole, so retipping a firing pin, polishing a pin like this, fabricating a pin like this. If I've got to cut threads, I don't use this lathe. So I just don't want people freaking out going, oh my word, he's ruining that lathe. The lathe's already basically ruined. It does exactly what I need it to do for this process. So let's take a look. So you can see just a little bit of it sticking out. It's going to be loud. I'm going to turn it on and file on that end. Break that edge. And this is the end that I cut on. This is the area that I cut with the cutoff disc. So I'm just truing up that end. Break that edge just a little bit. Then I take some sandpaper. Polish that end. Round it over. You can do the various grits depending on what the pin is for. Again, this one isn't a super critical pin, but regardless. So there we are. Now I'm going to turn it around, And I'm going to need to do the other end. So I have the forearm iron here. Before I do any more trimming on the pin, I want to make sure that I've got the length. So I'm sliding the pin through. I'm going to turn this so you can see it a little better. And we stick out this side or that side. And I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it's drilled off crooked. So it, again, not precise. It just has to hold that torsion spring. So we're a little long. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and polish on that end just a little bit. But I don't want to round the end because I want to thump one end to flare it a little bit. And I'll show you that. We're going to do that back at the vise. But I want to flare it so it won't fall out of the forearm iron. So I'm just truing up that end, making it flat, but not breaking the edge. I'm not even going to polish it either because I'm going to be pounding on it with a hammer. All right, let's head back to the vise. So the polished end is already rounded just a bit, so it'll go in, slide through the spring, go through the far side of the forearm iron. This other side's a little flat, kind of has a sharp raised edge. All I'm going to do is peen over the edge to make a bit of a head. And don't make fun of my hammer. I've had this hammer for over 20 years. It's my favorite hammer. And I keep rebuilding it, as you can see. It's old and tired, but it's my favorite hammer and I love it. As I tap on the pin, I'm going to spin it a bit, and I'm actually going to be hitting it on the edge. I'm making a little head. And sometimes I move the hammer instead of the pin. Just depends on how things are working. So on that top, it's actually flared a little bit. So let's check it. I can drop it in, see if it'll come all the way out. I can't push it all the way out, so it has a little bit of a head. Another way to check it would be, of course, to try to shove it through, and it won't go through. So this is general repair. I'm just flaring over a piece of spring stock that I made for a pivot. It just holds that torsion spring. I could have gone to the lathe, my bigger lathe, and machined out a nice pin with a head on one side so it couldn't come all the way through and done all kinds of work. General repair, quick and easy. Get it out the door. Not a high-end gun. This is not a Rigby and, or Holland & Holland. It's a Savage 24. Get it right, make it work. That's all we're trying to do here. It doesn't have to be high-end. Now, if this was, right, a Holland, Rigby, Wesley Richards, some of the German stuff, some of that high-end stuff, then yeah, I might go the little extra effort to really machine a precise pin, but chances are I'm not going to have this problem on those anyway. So we're going to slide the spring up inside, and I'm going to have to use this punch as kind of a slave pin. You can see how the punch is holding things in place. I can pull the punch out while I slowly work the pin through the first coil, then the second coil. Once I got it through that second coil, there we go. See that? Now, if I was really worried about that falling out, and I'm not, because once it goes inside here, it's not going to go no place. But I could even take and, actually I'll just do it just to show you, and rivet over this side. So now I'm going to use the ball bearing end, or the rounded end of my ball peen hammer, to thump this end. The drawback is that now you've riveted it over on both sides. So getting it out, it's not going to want to slide out as easy. A little bit more. There we go. Let's put it back together and see what we get. Our wood screw. Front screw. Snug that up. This back didn't come off. I'm going to check those screws just for fun. Nope, not quite right, because that should snap over center and stay there. Okay, so what I think is going on with this spring is it felt a little sharp on the end, and I think either somebody's been altering it or even shortening it, and I think it's short because this, as I was playing with it, you can see the forearm goes on, the latch is in, it's on the lug, on the barrel, it moves up, it should catch in that hook, get tight, go over center and pop up, and it's just not. I don't think it's the right length. So there's a couple ways we can go. You can, if you don't have any reference, you can start trying to bend it, lengthen it, things of that nature, which is what I'm going to do. I try to always use the part if it's there. If it's broken, you're missing half, often it's better to just replace it, or if it's gone completely, get a new one. But I'm not going to just replace it without trying to fix it. For several reasons. One is, if this is a savable part, why use something out of your inventory? Why charge the customer for something they don't need? So let's take this apart again, and I'll tell you that I'm going to cheat a bit. I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to go see if I've got one in inventory, because I believe I do. And then we can compare them, put them side by side and see where are we at. If you've got that ability, you've got things in inventory, check it. You know, what the heck? But just to replace it if you don't have to, I'm not a big fan of that, because if this is savable, then it's a working part. Why throw away a working part? So let me go grab that other piece, come back and we'll take a look at it. So I did have one in inventory, so I went and grabbed it. And this is the old original, and you can see how it's bare white metal here on the end, and the edges are a little sharp. Not razor sharp, but sharp to the touch. Whereas the original, it's kind of rounded, and it's blued. So I'm thinking somebody's been monkeying around with stuff, and we had the nail in the forearm already, so we know somebody's been inside this. So I'm going to line up the pivot loops, and then this first big loop, and you can see that, yeah, we're bent funny. So this one is the factory original, and this is the altered one. So we're bent up, and you can see it's a little short. I'm going to try to save it. Like I said, I always try to save the existing part if you can. Now, I may break it, or it may not be savable. We'll see. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bend this end down and straighten out this bow a little bit to give it a little bit more length. I'm going to do that in the vise. So here we go, we're in the vise. I'm going to try to lengthen it by compressing that bend in it. So here's where things can be exciting, because it'll either bend or it'll break, or I'll break my vise. All right, I'm going to stretch that a little bit more. And let's compare that. Again, rough comparison. But you can see we're already starting to bend down and starting to get a little closer to the shape we want. At this point, I'm going to try and bend just this leg down. This one here is the one we're altering. It's the shiny used one. This is the factory original one here on the front. And we're right about there. I'm going to try and bend that down just a little. So let's see if I clamp that like so. And excuse my head being in the way of the camera there. So I don't know that this is going to work 100%. I'm just trying to get it as close as I can. I don't know if I bent that any at all. You know what? I'm going to get a heavier hammer. All right, I know I've stretched it. I don't believe I bent that leg down very much. All right, I've stretched it a bit. I've straightened out the major bend. I didn't bend that tip down very much. But at this point, I'm going to try to put it in the gun and see what we do, see what happens. So I'm going to talk while I'm bolting this back together. So at what point do you stop fixing it and just replace it? So that's a good question, and every single person's going to have to make that decision, because if it's a $2 part and it'll basically go in and work, which a spring like this probably would, then it's more cost effective to replace it for your customer. But if you've got the piece and you can fix it, I like the attitude of fixing it for a couple reasons. One is it doesn't deplete your inventory. Maybe that's selfish, but so be it. Two, the more things you fix, the more you're going to learn how to fix them. So yeah, if you've got 10,000 of these springs, yeah, replace it. What the heck? Who cares? But if you don't have that spring, are you going to make one of these? Or are you going to try and fix this one? So the more you fix, the easier and quicker you'll be at fixing something. You'll learn how far you can bend something, how far you can peen something. You know, how much force it takes to move metal a certain distance. When you're just starting out, you just don't know those things. All right, everybody keep their fingers crossed. All right, so we are snapping into place, but not with as much tension as I'd like. So we're on the right track. I'm going to straighten that out a little bit more. Straighten that big loop on that spring a little more. And hopefully that'll do her. A lot of times it's trial and error. But after looking at it, I could tell that it probably wasn't as it really needed to be. Yeah, I wish I could bend that down a little bit. I just don't think I'm going to be able to without heating it. And it, talk about cost effective. Heat it up and bend it and then retemper it, then put it in. Yeah, it's really not worth all that. Okay. So we'll try her again. See where we're at. Another thing to be aware of, when we laid this up before we did any alterations to the spring was so short it would fit up here and catch. Now it's on top here like it's supposed to be. Hey, there we go. That's a little more like it. Yeah, that's a little more like it. I think we're about there. That's got good tension. I might straighten out a little bit more, but basically that's fixed. That's how it goes. Sometimes it's trial and error. You got to do it a couple different times. You don't want to go too far, which sometimes you will, but if you don't have to, because then you're shortening things, and yeah, it's just a headache and a hassle. So you can see how a repair of simply keeping the forearm on the gun was actually a couple things. The nail, we needed a whole new pivot pin because it was a nail. Come on. The nail worked, but come on. So we fabricated a new pin, then the spring, then replaced the forearm spring, the little torsion spring, and then the big spring needed some alterations so it would work to repair somebody else's alterations. So anyhow, we got it wrapped up. And what I'll do now is I'll make a note of what I did on the repair tag, price it out, get it over to shipping and handling, and get it dealt with. We'll see you later.
If you want to learn real gunsmithing and see more videos like this, be sure and like and subscribe so you don't miss out. If you're interested in training to be a real gunsmith, go check out the American Gunsmithing Institute.com, or for your own firearms training, AmericanGunsmith.com.